The President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, who has recently changed his rhetoric regarding Ukraine, had a phone conversation today with the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. According to Donald Trump, the conversation was productive and the parties allegedly agreed on how to end Russia's war against Ukraine. According to Donald Trump, high-level talks will be held in the near future. At first, these will be consultations between various officials. And the American delegation will be headed by Marco Rubio, and then in Budapest, in Hungary, at the appointed time, Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump will meet in order, as Trump put it, to end this shameful war between Russia and Ukraine. Tomorrow, October the 17th, Trump will meet with Vladimir Zelensky at the White House and said he'll tell Zelensky what he discussed with Putin. So accordingly, how should this war be ended? And all these statements by Trump don't quite fit with his rhetoric of recent days when he said that Putin doesn't want to end the war. Putin is not capable of making agreements at all, so support for Ukraine needs to be sharply increased. But at first glance, it looks like this doesn't fit together at all, so we need to dig a little deeper here to understand what Donald Trump has in mind. But now some insiders are already writing that Donald Trump changed his mind after talking to Putin and now does not support it. Strikes by the armed forces of Ukraine on Russian energy facilities on Russian territory accordingly. So here the issue might turn a little in a different direction. My name is Alexei Pechi. Today, it's still October 16th on the calendar. Let's sum up. The first results of the phone conversation between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, what they talked about, what they agreed on, and why another meeting is needed, and why. Unfortunately, to some extent, this is once again a victory for so-called Russian diplomacy because Putin has bought himself more time. Just yesterday, Pete Hegseth, the United States Secretary of Defense, said everything should be used against Russia and issued ultimatums to Putin. Another round of negotiations is already scheduled for today. So, before we begin, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, and please leave your comment under this episode. And if you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so financially with any donation using the links and details in the description of this video. It says there, support Alexei Pechi's channel. Choose any format that is convenient for you. I will be grateful for any support you can give. So, today, October 16, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, had a phone conversation with the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. The main topic is Russia's war against Ukraine and the prospects for its end. Well, it has become known that the phone conversation is already taking place. And Donald Trump wrote on the social network Truth Social, right now I'm talking to Putin. The conversation is ongoing, it's long, and I, like Putin, will report on its content after it ends. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And after the conversation, Trump published another lengthy message on the same social network, Truth Social. Quote, I just finished a phone conversation with the President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, and it was very productive. President Putin congratulated me, the President of the United States, on a great achievement. The establishment of peace in the Middle East, which, as he noted, people have dreamed of for centuries. I truly believe that success in the Middle East will help us in negotiations to end the war between Russia and Ukraine. President Putin thanked First Lady Melania for her involvement in projects related to children. Sorry, I'll stop quoting Trump. Child-related projects. That sounds a bit strange because Melania Trump edited a letter to dictator Putin asking that bloody bastard to release the children he kidnapped in Ukraine. But I'll continue quoting Trump. He, meaning Putin, expressed great gratitude and said that this work would continue. So Putin is saying, I will keep releasing those Ukrainian children whom I kidnapped. That's why, he says, this is good work. We also focused on trade issues between Russia and the United States. After the end of the war with Ukraine, after finishing the conversation, we agreed to have our high-level advisors meet next week. The first meeting on the United States side will be led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, along with other representatives who will be appointed additionally. The location of the meeting is still being determined. President Putin and I will then meet at an agreed location in Budapest, Hungary, to try to put an end to this shameful war between Russia and Ukraine. Tomorrow I will meet with President Zelensky in the Oval Office, where we will discuss my conversation with President Putin and many other issues. I believe that today's phone conversation was a big step forward. End of quote from Donald Trump. Well, it's hard to assess for now how big of a step forward it really was. So far, it's just talk. They discussed and agreed on something. But the main thing I take from this message is that, first of all, Putin managed to secure another meeting with Donald Trump in Hungary, in Budapest. When it will take place is still unknown. It's obvious that Trump, unfortunately, fell for the rhetoric that the Kremlin has been spreading in recent weeks. And it boils down to this. Remember, Lavrov, Peskov, Ushakov, in other words, all of Putin's circle, were saying, listen, what high-level talks between presidents are you talking about? For that, first you need to hold preparatory meetings. You need to have 1 million consultations. First the ministers need to meet, then their advisors, then the ministers again, then someone else, then another 15 rounds of negotiations. And only after that can Putin, Trump and Zelensky meet. Putin said he wanted to meet Zelensky, but a week later changed his mind. Trump announces after Alaska that Putin will meet with Zelensky, but then Putin says, I'm not meeting with anyone. That's it. Ultimately, Trump decides the rules. First, countless meetings at various levels. Now, Marco Rubio has gotten this headache. And then, someday in Budapest, there will be a meeting between Putin and Trump to talk about something again. Putin will leave, and again, nothing will come of it. That's it. Unfortunately, Trump fell for it. On the other hand, we see that Trump offered some kind of trade deal to Vladimir Putin and stated that the war should be ended. After the war, we can trade normally again. Here, most likely, it's about an attempt to resume trade in energy resources. That is gas, oil, petroleum products. So they flow to Europe again. That's all. That is restoring the market. Russia faces no consequences for its barbaric, savage war in the 21st century. It's just as if everything is rolling back and Russia is returning to the position it was in before 2022. On the other hand, as they say, we shouldn't rush to conclusions because that's just one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is that Trump has been loudly declaring in recent days that he is ready to supply Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, that he is ready to support Ukraine's offensive. By the way, tomorrow he will be discussing this with Volodymyr Zelensky in the Oval Office. There have been statements that Trump is creating the so-called Ukraine Victory Fund. This is a fund that will receive money from tariffs on China. This money will be used to buy weapons for the armed forces of Ukraine. Scott Bessent, Secretary of the Treasury, has already confirmed this information. I'll cover this in a separate episode and discuss the topic further. That's all. Well, overall, Trump's rhetoric sounded like he was already fed up with these games of Vladimir Putin, who is always stalling for time. But today he says that it was a good conversation and there will be another meeting. What I'm getting at is that all these escalations from Donald Trump could have been either an attempt, to get Putin to the negotiating table, or an attempt to show that everything is still at the same level as before, and that there will be no negotiations. Most likely, there are still behind-the-scenes issues that haven't been made public yet. But I think that for Putin, the terms of a future peace deal have changed for the worse, for the dictator Putin. And don't forget that yesterday Donald Trump also stated that Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, assured him that India will gradually stop buying Russian oil. And in general, the current trend shows that yes, indeed, there is a refusal. It's not complete, it's gradual, and unfortunately, it's slow. But India is still reducing the amount of Russian oil it buys. But on the other hand, again, for balance, I'll share some information that Cable News Network published today, right after the conversation between Putin and Trump. They write that Donald Trump changed his mind about supporting Ukrainian strikes on Russian energy facilities after his conversation with Putin. And Cable News Network writes that the United States has expanded intelligence sharing with Ukraine, including information about targets located deep inside Russian territory, as part of a strategic shift that both countries hope will allow them to resume negotiations with Moscow. The talks stalled after the summit between United States President Donald Trump and Russian leader Vladimir Putin in Alaska this summer failed to result in a peace agreement, according to two sources familiar with the situation. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is expected to push Trump to deploy additional long-range weapon systems capable of striking targets inside Russia. During his Friday meeting with Trump at the White House in Washington, A few days before Zelensky's visit, Trump indicated that he was open to this idea, emphasizing how his attitude toward the war had changed after the summit in Alaska. According to both sources, the shift in focus to providing intelligence on energy-related facilities and infrastructure, access to which the Trump administration had previously denied to Kyiv, occurred after Trump's meeting with Putin at the American military base in Alaska. This summer, Trump failed to reach an agreement with Putin that would have ended the war. After this summit, the United States tried to increase pressure on Putin, including by changing the way intelligence was shared, which the Trump administration hopes will change the Russian president's decision to continue the war. But then cable news network goes on to write a lot more of their own thoughts on this matter. And they come to the conclusion that after the conversation with Putin, most likely this idea will remain on hold for now, meaning it won't be discussed further. For now, Trump, as sources say, and again I emphasize these are cable news network sources, you have to take that into account as well. They state that for now, Donald Trump, let's put it this way, will urge Zelensky to refrain from strikes on energy infrastructure while Trump is negotiating with Putin. Again, as I said, Trump in this regard has once again gotten hooked on this needle of endless negotiations that Vladimir Putin started. And at the end of this episode, I'll add the reaction of Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, where Putin and Trump are planning to meet. And Orban writes, the planned meeting between the presidents of the United States and Russia is planned news for peace-loving people all over the world. We are ready. But this is the main peacemaker, if you didn't know, Viktor Orban. He has been the one promoting the idea of peaceful negotiations all this time. In general, I'll leave it at that for now. These are the first results so far. I think we'll dive deeper into this topic a little later. We need to wait for some kind of press release from the Kremlin for them to make a statement about it. Let's see what will be announced tomorrow. Because Trump will most likely voice some aspects of what he and Putin discussed. So for now, let's leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode. Subscribe to the channel, click the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.